Many people were not familiar with Grenache in South Africa. They forgot that in the 50s and the 60s, there was more than 5,000 hectares of Grenache in the country. And Grenache, we say Grenache Noir, which is the black skin or the dark blue skin version of Grenache, is so perfectly adapted to South Africa. It can handle the wind, it can handle the heat stress, it's a very rustic plant and can produce in fairly decent quantity, producing enough alcohol, I mean enough sugar, sometimes too much. But surprisingly, South Africa turned to white grapes in the 50s and the 60s as the main market. And it's only recently we discovered the Grenache that hasn't been pulled out and now making the backbone of the most interesting wines in South Africa, because this is the grape made for our warm climate, and the warmer it gets, the more Grenache we might see around. We have Radford Dale Grenache 2019 and a very unusual origin. This is a wine of origin Stellenbosch, while most of the Grenache comes from warmer climate, the Swartland, Picanuskloof, or poorer soil. This is Stellenbosch. So is it inspiring, Cathy?
Now that you put it that way, I am inspired. Of wine of the future. Cheers.
Cheers.
Look, this is typical Grenache in that the color is translucent. I know that you can get very deep Grenaches. I'm thinking of those of the Priorat and of Australia. But by and large, it comes in this translucent color, which makes you think immediately of Pinot Noir or Nebbiolo, and it also oxidizes fairly quickly, so it can get this russety red color as well to it. On the nose, it's opened up since we poured it, and pepperiness and a slight stemmy character, which could come from fermenting with stems, but definitely Grenache pepperiness. And for the first time actually on one of Radford Dale's wines, I'm picking up fruit, a real fruity character to it. Not in a bad way, of course, but it's got a really nice fruity nose of strawberries, maybe macerated strawberries. And on the palate, again these strawberries and a sucrosity. I think this is when Edward would use the word sucrosity, because there is a lusciousness, a sweetness to the wine, but without it being ultra fruity. But you're the Frenchman, is that the correct interpretation of sucrosity?
Yeah, it's definitely the perfect word for that. It's this a touch of sweetness, which is not obvious, but you find some sweetness not coming from sugar.
Correct, sweetness from the fruit.
Yeah.
I must say that, like a Grenache, it's very single-minded, this wine, I think. It delivers what it says on the label. It's got the pepperiness, the strawberry fruit, and it delivers that on the nose, and it delivers that on the palate. And we were also talking earlier about the way that you can potentially recognize Grenache in a lineup, in that it is a lower acid grape.
Yes.
And for those winemakers who are doing more non-interventionist winemaking, they'll naturally leave the acidity quite low. And if you do taste this wine, the acidity on this is much lower than several others that you would have tasted.
Yes. Grenache, when you come in Europe, Spain or in France, is considered as the Pinot Noir of the South, which means the texture is not based on the tannins from the grapes, like Pinot Noir. You have a lot of velvety and silky texture on the middle palate, but still, for a warm climate, you can focus on red fruit like strawberry, which is a good marker of Grenache Noir. What I like with that wine is, yes, like you say, it delivers everything, but what makes you think it's not a Pinot Noir? Let's play the devil's advocate.
Firstly, it doesn't have that element of Goutte de terroir that Pinot Noir should have.
Australians says terroir don't exist. Luckily, we're not Australians.
We know that. Okay, this is strawberry fruit. It's not cherry fruit. So there's definitely that element. There's also not that earthy undertone that you sometimes get from Pinot Noir. Of course, if we're talking more New Zealand Pinot Noir, that's more a Cherol, a sucker. I always wondered why the dentist, you go to the dentist in South Africa and he used to give you those little red suckers, and I think, go to the dentist and he gives you something to give you another hole in the tooth.
Is it how you describe that for MW exam?
No, not at all, not at all.
Okay.
Confected.
Okay.
Confected. So this would be not Pinot Noir because it doesn't have the cherry component, it doesn't have the earthy component and that slight herbalness to it. It also doesn't have the acidity of Pinot Noir or the tannins of Pinot Noir. They are completely different to that. Pinot Noir almost is built on its acidity and that it relies on that for its structure, and then the Pinot Noir acid structure is supported by the tannin structure, whereas this, there's no acidity and the tannins are also far more supple, soft and rounded.
Remember that Pinot Noir is supposed to be higher acidity because it's usually cultivated in cooler places, while Grenache can handle the warmest barren land you can imagine. You go in places in Spain where nothing else can grow but Grenache, and the same in the Roussillon in the south of France. And that, I really think that the future of South Africa, because at the same time it can grow on very poor land, warm land, but because it's juicy fruit and it's got this silky and velvety character on the palate that is kind of over-delivering on the promises of a warm climate.
And I think that when you're tasting these wines out of your pack, look for that silky texture because it definitely is here on this wine.
Because acidity is low, but there's still freshness coming from the fruit in the wine. So don't expect something flabby. It's not. It's very much alive, very juicy. It's just rounder.
Yes.
Thank you.